Welcome back.
Yeah, this is the one we're recording after a little bit of a break, maybe about a week from the last recording, I think.
Yeah, we've taken a minor break in our fairly quick schedule. I mean, we haven't been doing it weekly, that's for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just us two today. We thought we might have Felix for a little bit to discuss Gronk.
But yeah,
he's busy. So
we are going to save that probably for a more in-depth, introspective episode on Felix's characters as a whole.
Exactly.
Today we actually are coming from, we're recording from the empty, flat, and terribly cold land of Lincolnshire. Chris has made, very kindly, the trip up north.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me in my rather refrigerated room.
But yeah, I think we should kind of start with a small catch up on where we were last session, which was we had James on and we talked about his new character Gud, and with regards to the party had just kind of left Sarah's with this new dragon in tow.
Yes.
You guys were on your way to the area known as the Ashen Plains on the continent of Ariosk. And in particular, you were arriving at the port city of Harkenky, which you had been told was kind of the capital of the area, and just kind of going into it, you knew that this kind of area was quite a big town, a big city, so that there'd be things to do. But ultimately, the party's goal was to kind of get to the other side of the continent, to Huron's tomb. So everything was kind of happening very fast. From what you can remember, Nick, did you have any kind of strong feelings going in?
Well, I knew that this was going to be a big Thexan arc. And this was the time when Blum was sort of emerging and he was starting to learn, as we discussed last time, about the heritage of Blum's family. But most importantly, Thexans. And so I was trying desperately to have a conversation with Thexan about this exact thing. And you know, it didn't really matter how much I tried to get it, but he slipped from beyond my fingers multiple times. I just couldn't manage to pin him down and get him to have the talk about the family. It's not like it was intentional. It's Sev even mentioned at the time. There was never a moment that aligned. He managed to get one with Gud.
Yeah,
weirdly enough.
Well, the funny thing I think about this arc is Gud got more talking done than any other member of the party. and the funniest part was, it was with a guard. I think we should probably start there. As a starting point, because you met that guard on the first day you arrived in Harkenky. And a small description of Harkenky, the city. It is a kind of sandstone city in this more... if you think of a similar climate to the Mediterranean in the summer, with some aspects of kind of like North Africa. It's a bit flatter. There's more sandstone, occasional sand dunes, very hot, very sunny. And Harkenky is this big port city that's built up and was occupied by the kind of those that had been forced out of the original continent of Restria when Huron had actually gone over and went to go fight the Dark One. And so, yeah, you guys arrived and went about it.
Yeah, because we knew our destination. We didn't quite know where it was in Ariosk, as I understand it. And so we were looking for directions. And in the first city that we went into, a few things set us on a certain course. So the first was I believe. Now, which noble did we contact first? We did meet Ozymandias.
Yeah, so Osmandus was the dragon. You met Oz later on.
Yes.
It was Osmond.
Osmond.
But the first two that you encountered were actually they were, I think, I can get the names for you.
Oh, please do.
They were to give you. They were House Mandel.
House Mandel.
And House Claxton.
Yes, okay, so House Mandel and Claxton.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did a job for them, I remember.
Yes.
We did a job for them. And part of this was our big political scene escalating towards a sort of race between the different political houses.
Yes.
The race to essentially find this country's, what I imagine the equivalent of Excalibur to be.
Yes, yeah. There was a kind of it was a well-known secret that the king was unwell.
Yeah.
And that the king had effectively two sons, and in that kind of rush and that bid for power, there had been two rival factions growing in the undertones, and so the king, not really the king, but those underneath him, pushed for this different way of crowning an heir, which was this quest for this item. And you guys took part in it.
Yeah, we did. Oh boy, did we? I mean, God, we took part. We left a part of us with it. Before even the race itself had began,
yes,
Gronk found himself. This is why we wanted Felix on
yes.
for this, because he had a particularly weird time this arc.
Yes.
Gronk insulted a rather noble patron.
Yes, I believe it was it wasn't House Mandel. My apologies. It was House Claxton. I think House Braxton. No, it was House Mandel. I'm completely wrong. Yes, it was House Mandel and House Claxton. And as you guys kind of entered the city for the first time, they had actually exited a bar, rather inebriated.
Yeah.
And they had walked into your group, and in an inebriated state, said some pretty rude things.
Yes.
And you guys, being the valiant heroes that you are, decided not to smash their brains in. And rather notably, Gronk showed restraint.
Amazingly.
Yeah, which was huge for him. And so, yeah, you had that first interaction. And then you guys went to a tavern, and that tavern kind of told you roughly where Huron's tomb was meant to be. And you guys kind of came to the realization that you were really far away from it, and you'd have to pay for the travel.
Yeah.
The issue was you guys were all skint, had no money at all.
I mean, Blum had blown all of his money on some magic gloves that ate his hands.
Exactly.
So, you know, I think that I think someone had some money and they didn't tell the party.
Yes. No, I think it was either Gronk.
It was either Gronk or
it was Lorena.
Yeah, one of the two. And Lorena we would never have known.
Yes. Lorena liked to wear her wealth.
Yes. It wasn't monetary, if you will.
Yeah. But would, refuse to part from her sixth favorite brooch.
Yeah.
But so you had then heard about this massive tournament that was occurring. And so you guys all kind of put your names into different bouts, and there was a ballot drawn, and then the fights were on, I think. I can't particularly remember just off the top of my head who was drawn against who, but I remember that Thexan lost.
Yes, there were the duels, and we had Holger fought.
Yes.
Thexan fought. Did Gronk fight?
Gronk did fight, yes.
But did Gronk fight with his belt?
No.
So the night before, this big fight was going to go on.
Yeah.
Gronk was beset upon in the street.
Yes, completely unprovoked. Or so he'd have you believe.
Completely unprovoked. At least that was what we heard, you know, his side of the story.
Yeah.
And he was stripped bare of his weapon.
Yes.
Of his money and potions.
Of his belt as well.
I mean, that was the most important.
Yeah.
His legendary... The one thing in this campaign that really defined his sort of power was the belt. I mean, Storm Giant strength. That's 29.
Well, I think it would actually shine some light on just how bad of a loss this was, and perhaps Gronk's thinking by just sharing the reason why Gronk went and did this. So Gronk had, as we established in earlier episodes, made a rather shady deal with the White Cloaks to join them.
Yeah,
and they had sent him a message letting him know that someone was smuggling in magic scrolls to Restria from this port. And so Gronk, being, you know, the new zealous White Cloak that he was,
oh god,
went by himself, didn't tell anyone, to the center of this gang, and decided that the best approach that he could would be to go find what looked like a ruffian on the side of the street, pay them money to go into the bar and lock the door behind them, and then he would firebomb the place.
Arson! That was his solution.
That was his solution. And Gronk tried as he may to convince them. And I think he paid them like 10 copper.
10 copper?
It was an insultingly low amount.
I think it's a testament to both Felix and Gronk that, you know, someone who doesn't quite have a full grasp on the nuances of society, you know, being born of a different race and going from, you know, a faraway land of special magic Okia.
Yeah.
That in a city with noble houses that hold absolute power.
Yes.
Certainly, I mean, we were in a different continent. It was a real wake-up call for us that this could happen.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the loss of that belt was huge, especially given that we had to fight the person who had stolen it from him the next day in one-on-one.
Yes. So one of the, I think his name is Asher Mandel, the eldest Mandel brother.
Yeah.
There was one of three. He was the leader of this gang. He was a bit of a brute. And effectively, Gronk bribes this woman. She goes in the bar, immediately gives him up.
Yeah.
And as he's getting ready to throw his Molotov through the front window, the doors swing open and the window is open and 50 guys come through. Gronk, being Gronk, though, thinks, you know what? This is still winnable.
So I don't think I was there for that rolling.
Yes.
How did you decide to DM that? Was it like a cutscene and, okay, so Gronk, you can, if you want to, you know, go through this and we'll just do one roll to decide it? Or did you make him go through a proper combat?
So the way that I did it is I made him go through a combat. So,
oh my god. The action economy alone.
So the way that I did it is I actually did it in the sense that the numbers would get bigger as it would go past.
Bigger than 50?
No. So it wasn't 50 initially. It was maybe like 10. But they all came out on the first turn. And then after the first turn, another 10 came out. So effectively, the numbers were getting whittled down by Gronk. But eventually it hit a point
I mean,
where...
he could only kill... He's only got so many actions.
Exactly.
Even with Storm Giant strength, you can only kill maybe 5 guys a turn.
Exactly. And at this point, Gronk is kind of brought low. And this Asher Mandel has kind of respected the fact that Gronk has, you know, hurt so many of his guys. But he wants to send a message. So what he does is he basically beats him up, takes his armor off him, takes the belt off him, and then chops his arm off.
I forgot that he lost an arm.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I would have remembered that, but honestly, I think the trauma of what happened later in this arc has sort of really eclipsed that sort of those smaller moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lost an arm. And he was left in the street, and he sort of wandered back a few hours later,
and he was
minus all of his loot, minus the belt and
well, because this is the thing. I didn't want to. I just thought it'd be a really horrible way of such a massive character to go, and it also fit in with the way that the villain is a massive douchebag.
Now, we're going to get Felix's 2 cents on this eventually, but do you think that that was one of the contributing factors to his decision later on with Gronk's fate?
No, because I think ultimately Gronk was a bit in the end of, in that last scenario, as we'll get into later, I think Gronk was the least active agent.
I see.
Because the reason why he encountered that is because he felt it wrong. Whereas the others kind of decided to go on their own volition for their own reasons.
I see.
But yes.
Okay, yeah.
After this, we then have the tourney.
Yes, well, there was the tournament. Not a huge amount to say here, except maybe that, I mean, Holger won, I think.
Holger won, and
unsurprisingly, since his character was properly good at dueling.
Yeah. I think Gronk somehow won as well.
I mean, somehow, he was a paladin.
Yeah.
And even without the belt, the man was strong. But he literally with one hand behind his back. Well, I guess figuratively.
One hand behind his back, a couple miles.
Yes, a couple miles behind his back, yeah. That's a good question. Did the man keep his arm?
I think he must have. Because Gronk never found it.
Mounted on his wall.
Maybe the woman that double-crossed him kept Gronk's arm.
Why? Was it a barmaid?
Well, it's the whole thing. They just like
you walk into the cellar and it's like meat hooks of people's like limbs. Horrifying.
You don't know the law.
Yes, well.
You've got to remember.
You've got me there.
In the world, everyone is one bad day from being a comic.
I didn't realize I lived in the DC universe. You're the Joker. Yes, Batman. I had my arm taken off in the street.
But I think what was even more important after this that happened after is all the shenanigans that happened the night of the first round.
Oh, absolutely. That was a big night for Blum.
Yeah, because I think there was 2 pretty massive things that happened. One that the party instigated, and then one that, well, everything else instigated.
So the first thing was Blum finally, now that he was in a situation where there was actual royalty concerned, and Blum not high charisma. He's a smelly guy, doesn't dress up well.
Yeah.
So the nobles were a bit dismissive of him. But he knew poison, and he knew enough about royalty to know that most kings and queens get poisoned to death.
Yes. And
I had a spell that I had been holding on to since Blum was made. Level 3. Okay? And now we're like level 10.
Yes.
And that was detect poison. And he'd been holding on to this all this time. And now he cast detect poison. And what did he find? A hint on the air of a deadly poison being fed to the king, the queen as well.
Yeah.
And I believe, wasn't there one other?
There was. You detected that there was poison in the wine taster's food.
I mean,
food taster's food.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the food taster tasting both the king's and their own food naturally also received some of this poison.
Yeah. But what was interesting is it wasn't affecting the food tasting; it was affecting the other 2.
That's right. Yes, it was almost like a smart virus.
Yes.
But we did actually identify the poison.
Yes, it was purple worm venom.
Purple worm venom. We never actually encountered a purple worm, sadly. No. I'm sure Blum would have loved to have stolen its eyeballs and its tongue and all the saliva, and made some great biochemical war crimes. But, Blum found this out and he tried to bring it up. But, of course, it's Blum. So he was dismissed.
Yeah.
But what happened next really helped sell the imminent danger. Because this was the moment when Blum's recent nemesis came into the fray. I guess this is the building upon this was the sort of start of. I mean, Dundellin has become a bit of a recurring villain for us now.
Yeah, the kind of plague father, a little bit like Nurgle, I guess.
Heavily inspired.
Yeah, and one of his agents came to play at this kind of feast. Everyone that participated in this kind of the melee rounds and either won or put on a good show was given a royal invite to attend a small banquet with the most of the nobles. And this ragged figure comes through.
Was he? I remember. Was he bloated, or did he bloat before he burst?
So he was. He wasn't bloated, but he was clearly not meant to be there.
Yeah,
he looked a little bit like Blum in that he reeked a bit.
Mm.
But whereas Blum was kind of like, like earthy clean, this guy was very much like he had boils on him and ulcers, and he clearly showed signs of, if not decay, disease, and quite infectious disease. And then, as you said, yes, right before he attacked, he bloated and expanded, and kind of his whole body transformed.
He became a monstrosity of Dundellin, like a proper demon host.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is actually, because I realised sorry, Seb, deeply sorry. We've made a mistake already, or I've made a mistake.
Hey?
There was actually 3 sons to this king. There was the eldest son, who I believe his name was Oliver.
Oh yes.
And then there was another son who was the kind of the second queen, her youngest son, and then there was another son who was a bastard, which was Osmond.
Of course.
And this assassin, this creature of Dundellin, walks right up to the main heir, the main prince, the one that was kind of the prodigal son almost, and snaps his neck.
It makes you wonder, what the fuck were the royal guards? Like, this guy needs to hire some better guards because, like, number one, no one approaches the king if they don't know who they are.
Yeah. And 2,
I mean, I get that they were a proud sort of warrior family, but at the same time, unless you've been officially challenged to a duel, you don't go near the riffraff.
Well, there was a reason the guards weren't working. So the reason was it was a hit, and it was paid off by the other son. So the other son, there was effectively 2 factions. One, which was siding with the legitimate second son.
Okay.
And the other one that was kind of taking on the mantle of Oz's potential claim, the bastard son, because they kind of realized that the other son was a psychopath.
A real Joffrey.
Yeah, like a real awful guy. So
I guess the question remains is, this other son, did he hire the assassin knowing it was a demon?
Yes.
Okay.
So if not a demon, he knew that the people there were related to some form of dark.
They were magic. Yeah. So I guess like a second sort of degree of separation of knows that magic's involved, but not how that is going to take form.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you think that the prince was happy with how the hit went, considering how public it was?
I think at least in his mind, he would have been happy that it happened this way because one, there was the public showing of he helped kill it.
Good point.
Which is kind of his way or his thought of how he was planning to clear his name.
Yes, it's a lot like being killed by a monster is quite equivalent to being killed by a natural disaster.
Exactly. And another thing was the reason why he wanted them killed here was because everyone could see that if he helped like his father in this time, he'd be seen as the son that stepped up to the plate and the obvious heir. And the idea was that if he did it at this party, surrounded by all the nobles of the realm, they'd recognize his claim.
Well, so that was, so absolutely publicity, get it out in the open. And then, I mean, of course, the party sort of aided along that scheme by really getting rid of that monster.
Exactly.
We weren't really aware of, I mean, we didn't like that sort of second prince.
Yeah, you didn't like him.
We didn't like him because he was posh. Basically, I think it was our natural prejudice against posh people.
Exactly.
And yeah, I guess we were more focused on the Dundellen part because Blum had a contact with Dundellen.
Yes.
And so that was the sort of really the only other time that we'd heard the name.
Yeah.
But then we suddenly realized that, okay, so this is an active threat.
Yes. And on top of that, you were also pretty focused on just getting to Huron's tomb.
Yeah, we were in a hurry. And this was, from our point of view, clearly an agent. Now, at the time, I think we did still think this was an agent of the Dark One.
Yes.
And it has been confirmed, at least implicitly, that Dundellen is separate from the Dark One.
Yes, he is.
So during that time, before the sort of great re-emergence of all the gods, before the second campaign, Dundellen was active.
Yes, he was. But not on Restria.
I see.
So there were a few gods, mostly the good ones, well, quite sadly, that were the ones that were kind of in the Milesian Empire when it all went wrong and everything collapsed. So because they were in their form on the plane as like an avatar, they were the ones that were almost kind of locked away. And the Dark One was the only one on that continent, at least in his avatar form. And so kind of basically made it his own little state of power, almost.
So wherever the gods were when the collapse happened, that's where they stayed?
A little bit, yes. Yeah.
I see.
And you'd have their agents working through it. But it was a bit more of like in the way that you'd have like localized religions with communities. That's the way that it was approached, at least when I was planning the lore.
Well, I suppose I could be wildly off with this, but if, the gods work in a sort of, well, their power is also dependent upon faith. With the enormous death that followed the collapse, the gods would be greatly diminished and they would be reduced to small communities. Yeah,
definitely. And it was a situation where at least Dundellen didn't have many practices or worshippers.
I mean, how many people really worship Dundellen? Because, actively worshipping and asking for blessings from the kin of disease, he's very demonic. And I suppose, would you say that people worship him more in a sort of, in asking for curses or asking for sort of to be ignored rather than for active blessings?
Yeah, so I think it is more to either one, be ignored if there's a bunch of plagues going around, but also, if you've got someone who's particularly upset you, you may pray to Dundellen to, give him herpes.
Dundellen, like please give my ex crabs.
Exactly, and you know what? If you love Dundellen enough, maybe your ex will get crabs,
and maybe you will too.
Hey, he shares the love.
That's right. Dundellen's great embrace will give everyone the athlete's foot. I mean, so after we killed the beast, the thing,
there was a second thing that happened that night.
Yeah.
Effectively, the party had a plan for a heist.
We did. We wanted to steal the belt back. Now, the plan was dubious. The original plan, before things got too harebrained, was for someone to dress up as a lady of the night and seduce the belt of the guy who had stolen it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how successful that plan would have been, and I'm sure Yolda will tell you that it would have worked 100%. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad that they never got the chance to do it, because I think that would have seriously blown stuff out of proportion and made everything a little too ridiculous.
Yeah, so instead, what they did is find a lady of the night. And then go off and have her, try and help them.
Yeah. They hired the services of
they hired
a
her
prostitute.
for the evening,
And it was,
was there a unique characteristic to this prostitute that
I don't remember. I think we were also taken aback at the time that it never really reached that description. And I know that, I mean, Gronk did eventually get the belt back, didn't he?
That you did,
but it wasn't this plan that did it.
It was.
Was it?
Yeah.
It was. I'm sorry. No. I need to go. Can you remind me what happened?
It worked. They had this person who had agreed. They'd hired him for the night. They said, if you just go and distract this man in this tent for the evening or for however long, we'll pay you handsomely. And they didn't really tell her anything else. So she went off and did that. And they watched, got the peepers out and watched from another tent. And as they both entered the tent together, the three of them kind of swooped in,
grabbed the stuff and ran out the door.
Grabbed the stuff and left. And as they did, the guy was, of course, he noticed pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
Like, his muscles immediately diminished, and he was infuriated. And the first thing this brute did was lash out and try and kill this woman, thinking that she was clearly completely involved in this plot.
Yeah.
And so the party then have the decision of, well, do we let this innocent woman die?
I think I see where this is going.
Or do we try and save her?
Oh no. And
Gronk, the great hero that he was, and Thexan, the great hero that he was, both decided to run the hell away.
Jeez, it run.
Yeah. And you know what? I think at this point we realized that maybe Holger had a heart, because Holger, the established complete degen and incel party, the man who had, his whole reason for adventuring was because he got too bored of living in his parents' basement.
Yeah. I mean, he was he wasn't like one of the children. He was an adult.
Yeah. And he saved them. He saved the woman.
Yeah.
And a small skirmish ensued. But eventually you guys kind of decided rather it wasn't a great idea to murder another noble.
A high profile individual.
Yeah.
Another at this party.
And so you guys left. And you got away.
We got away, and I think that was when the race really started.
Yes.
That was when it began, because that was the sort of initial big celebration to sort of announce the beginning of the games, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was effectively the winner of the games. It was just meant to congratulate the king, and the king choosing this prodigal son that died to be his official heir.
Yeah.
Because it's an elective monarchy. And then you guys were approached after this in the night by an agent who was working for one of the two factions. And there was a faction which was known as the Reds and the Blues. The Reds supported the kind of legitimate son. The Blues supported this bastard son.
Yeah.
You were dragged aside to their tent.
And I was about to make a TF2 joke there. I was really blanking on it. Sorry. Yeah. Ignore that.
Cook on that.
Yeah, I'll come back to you at the end.
But you went there and you were kind of met by someone. And rather surprisingly, the head of this faction against this psychotic son was the son's mother.
Oh, that's right. That is right.
And at that point, I think they then turned around to you and they grabbed the still pretty drunk Oz and thrust him into your group and said, look after him. Go help him.
And we thought initially he was going to be dead weight. Which, I mean, he was initially dead weight.
Yeah.
He was
an
exactly
extra sword, and that was about it.
I mean, he was an extra sword, but not an extra sword in combat. Just, maybe an intimidation.
Yeah.
If it ever came to that.
And just to give context, this is then the next day when the race is announced. And the whole race is basically, there is a massive volcano in the middle of a massive lake called the Boiling Basin, called the Kettle Top. And in there is a fire drake, a great ancient dragon, and it has eggs. And the whole point of the race was whoever could get to that volcano and steal a dragon egg and bring it back would basically be rewarded handsomely.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was that there were various parties, but ultimately there were two main parties: the Green Band and those allied with the kind of the Reds,
Yeah.
who were kind of vying to give it to the heir that they wanted and have them be seen as a legitimate heir.
And there were multiple sort of routes to the boiling basin and to the island in the center.
Yes.
Most of the people went up through Harken Key, so they went north to the river. Yeah. And we decided there was lots of debate over which route to go.
Yes, inevitably, like at least 2 sessions.
At least 2 sessions, yeah. God, so much talking. And we decided that there would be too much conflict and too much choke in the river going inland.
Yeah.
Not only would we be fighting against the current, we'd also be fighting against various other people on the ships.
Yeah, and there was no guarantee you'd be able to find a fast ship that you would be able to charter compared to the vast amount of wealth some of these noble families had.
And who knows what traps they had laid. You know, they had allies in the city. They had time and prep beforehand to set things up.
Yeah.
So ultimately, we decided to go south. We went to sort of through the plains towards Jasper Fire.
Yeah.
And it was in these plains, you know, we had a bit of travel time, so we talked in character motivations. At this point, I believe we had met Lucas.
Yes. Yeah, so Lucas was a player that joined the party for, I think, probably about this part of the campaign to, I think, the end, actually. It was a character that joined
he was
just
there.
to the final lot. And he was I believe, a bard rogue multi-class.
That's right, he was Psionic Blades rogue.
Yes, that is the one.
Yeah.
And yeah, Lucas helped scout out Jasper Fire for you guys, helped secure horses.
He made quite an entrance, and then the party sort of ignored him mostly, rather tragically, for the remaining of the journey.
Yeah,
even though he was tremendously helpful.
Yeah, he helped with the scouting. He kind of taught the party how to maybe not cause a scene everywhere they go.
Well, I don't know how successful he was with that.
Well, this was, could we say that his avoidal conflict meant that the party was so pumped up that by the time they got to the castle top, they might not make the wisest decision.
Perhaps. But before we even made it to the Boiling Basin, we stumbled across another important plot point that would be relevant in the next campaign, and that was an entrance to the Ways.
Yes.
Now, the Ways were something that were in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
How sort of similar were they to the original inspiration?
I think they are similar in the sense that they're a passage that allows you to speed up time. The exterior, at least those that you see like on kind of land, on the material plane, they look similar. However, I wanted to change the kind of aesthetic inside, but functionally it's the same. They were once this way of getting through to people, through places, but it got corrupted when the source of magic got corrupted.
Yeah.
However, the source of corruption and the way it's evolved is different now, and well, there are plot points in the main campaign
we won't get onto just yet,
which will explore it. But in terms of the way it looks, it is this kind of dark, purpley mist almost that surrounds it. Similar to the way Jordan describes it in this book, it's very dark. It feels unnaturally dark.
Yeah.
However, it's almost a bit like those paintings. They're like surrealist paintings.
Like with all the stairs going every dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have more of that, where like, whereas in Jordan's book it describes it, it's at different levels, but it's like everything's falling apart.
In Jordan's, it's sort of like walking through Moria, but not very big and open, like very claustrophobic.
Yeah. Yes. So in this, it's more like walking through one of those those surrealist paintings, where everything's seeming to like change, and you look up and you see stairs, and if you look up at the right angle, you might be able to see like your friends who are actually just 2 meters behind you up on the wall. And it is a little bit trippy.
Yeah. If you turn left, you might go right. If you walk down some stairs, you might end up above you. Yeah. All sorts of crazy shit. And that was what we explored. I can't remember exactly what the entrance looked like. I think was it just a cave or
so in this case it was a stone. It was literally just all that was left of it was one of the last stones that would have made the full way gate.
And we made a sort of, an arcana, a successful, we rolled high, good check, and somehow we reactivated it.
Yeah.
Because we got pulled in.
Exactly, because the thing that you saw was a flat plane of grass, and rather weirdly, all the grass had been kind of pushed flat outwards from this stone, and there looked to be dew on it, whereas the rest of the grass was basically bone dry. And yeah, I think it was Gronk, or maybe it was Blum.
Blum definitely went in. In fact, I sort of could tell you because we all went to different places. The ways took us to separate locations. We had Blum, Gronk, and Holger at least all went in, and we did have a few people that went with them, I think. And if I remember correctly, we saw Yzma.
Yes.
The city in the desert.
Yes, you did.
And I think Thexan saw that, along with maybe Gronk.
Yeah, Gronk as well. And then I believe Holger went to what was another continent.
Yes. Now that was, I think you revealed at the time it was Lamentia.
Yes.
But it was part of the the sort of very western, quite southerly mountain range that's very Asian inspired.
Yeah.
Tropical and misty.
Yeah, it's a little bit like is it the southern or the northern air temple in Avatar? It was really quite small mountains, but they protrude out of a rainforest, and they have these temples built on them.
Steep, not amazingly huge, but quite sharp.
Yeah. And I think there was one last one, which was a jungle city that you could look through. I don't think anyone walked through this gate.
No, there wasn't.
But that was a glimpse to another map. I won't spoil where, in case we come back to it. But there is a city out there that it was surrounded by these black butterflies.
Now we did encounter the black butterflies.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So someone did go there.
But that was the sort of Asian scenery that Holger saw, because Holger actually touched one, and the black butterfly invaded his flesh.
Yes.
It was not what we were expecting. I believe we actually caught one of those butterflies in a jar. Yes, Blum went there because he was the only one that had jars on him.
Oh yeah, you went back after Holger
Yeah.
got hit by it.
Yeah.
And caught one. Yeah. If you want a little bit of a lore reason, these butterflies carry a pretty brutal disease. It's like an acidic venom or like an acidic spore that they release whenever they touch something, and it carries this living virus that will kill most things pretty quickly if you're not immediately administered for some form of magical healing.
So the people that, there were definitely people living in that region.
Yeah.
So people that live there, they would be, well, first of all, they'd be knowledgeable about butterflies.
Yes.
In my mind, I'm imagining, you don't have to tell me anything, but I'm imagining a secret enclave of assassins that excel in poisoning. And, if this is where extreme poisons are grown, it would not surprise me if the purple worm toxin that the king was poisoned with was originated from this region. And that's just a conspiracy theory from me.
I'm going to plead the fifth.
My way off base there.
I just, I don't always disclose it.
Okay.
Because it keeps the cards, tied to my chest.
Well, but you heard it here first. If that does get confirmed, folks, my all-seeing foresight.
But yeah. After this, you guys then encountered another group of hunters or questers. And rather than deciding to join up and work together,
why would we? You say that like it was a good idea, but we had like 2 separate assassination attempts, and Gronk had had his things stolen by a person that admittedly he didn't tell us that he tried to burn the bar down.
Yeah,
we thought it was unprovoked, and also we already had loads of people in our party. I don't think we could have handled any more NPCs.
Yeah. And so you decided that the best option would be to beat them all up senseless, and then intimidate them into giving you their horses and their arms and armor, and then just leaving them on the side of the road.
I mean, a kinder fate than many of our foes were left with.
Yeah, to be honest, that was it was one of the least bloody incidents we had.
It was certainly less brutal than the times that we just biochemically melted people.
Yes.
Which happened increasingly as time went on.
Yeah. I think Blum got a reputation for just being a walking war crime.
I mean, it's because his weapons didn't always work. He wasn't an artificer. Although that being said, Blum would have made a great artificer.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. His contraptions were always a bit shit.
He just liked to tinker with chemical weapons.
I mean, oh my god. Some of the items that you let me create were pretty great. They were great. We had the lightning rod arrows, which were normal arrows, but they allowed additional lightning damage because they were metal spikes that would conduct and sort of...
Which worked really well with Lorena.
And Krem.
Who are both always throwing lightning bolts around.
Yeah.
Lorena, it will be noted, largely threw people.
That's true.
But this helped mean that even if she hit you, she did slightly more damage to the thing you were hitting.
Yeah. So, pound for pound, it was great.
Yeah.
He also made manticore spine arrows and daggers.
Yes.
Which did, I believe... they did additional things on crits. I can't remember off the top of my head.
So if they crit, I think it was that they splintered off and did an extra D4 piercing.
No,
damage.
I'm certain it was something else. I'm going to bring it up. But regardless, we were gaining our momentum as a deadly force, and that was when we actually sort of reached Jasper Fire. And I don't really remember much about Jasper Fire.
So you guys were pretty much in there and out there within 10 minutes.
Yeah, but we passed straight through it after assumingly raiding a general store of all their goods.
You went to general store, got enough rations for the trip, got the horses you need, and then booked it.
Pretty much.
And it was after this that you then kind of begin to get to the lake itself, the boiling basin. But as you guys are approaching that, a couple of funny incidents occur. So firstly, you have an encounter with, I think it was a bullet, but it could have been another bigger monster. But I think it was a bullet. Because I remember Gud getting off his horse and trying to wrestle it.
Yep. A classic Gud move. Couldn't back down from a challenge.
Yeah.
He'd fought a sea monster. Of course, we'd never met it.
Yeah.
We'd never seen this sea monster wrangling.
Yeah. Yeah. He quote unquote fought a sea monster.
I mean, he did fight one with us technically, but that's a bit of a technicality because the ones that really damaged it were Gronk and Holger.
Yeah.
No, this was the first time we saw him try and one-on-one something pretty epically, and
kind of ended with a whimper.
It did.
Because he was wrestling its tail while the rest of you just attacked it.
Yeah, he spent his turns doing
unarmed
attacks and grapple checks.
Yeah.
And, naturally, at level 10, grapple is going to do fuck all against a big monster. It's unfortunate because I think Gud would have made a very entertaining WWE-style low-level character.
Yeah.
It's just that we didn't get to see those, in where sort of melee and brawling really shines is in the early levels.
Exactly. But I think after this fight occurred, you guys all decided to kind of get back on your horses I don't know how this happened, but
Yes,
Gud was dropped on his horse.
Gud jumped or was dropped, some sort of falling or force.
But it was a great height.
Yeah,
Directly onto his horse.
that's right.
And not for the first time. James mercilessly crushed his mount's back.
That's right. I can't believe that happened again, but we will get onto that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's all, everything. It all comes round. History repeats.
It has happened at least twice, maybe even 3 times.
If I had a nickel for every time James broke a horse in half with his character's weight, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice.
Yeah, and it was just a strange moment that he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to jump. And I was like, wait, James, you're in heavy full plate armor.
Yeah.
And you've dropped this far, and you're carrying a 2-handed maul, and you've got full kit.
Yeah.
I think this horse is dead.
Yep, super dead.
But yeah, from that point on, I think it was him and Gronk were riding together on the same horse, which was funny because we got Gronk the comically too large horse at this point. Because he was just bigger than everyone.
Yeah.
But you then begin to arrive at the place where you can get a boat, which was just outside of Jasperfire. And this is when Holger has a wonderful idea.
Oh God.
Which is that he can see it, but he's done waiting for the party. Skip a 5-minute or a 2-minute travel scene described by the DM, or any more of this talking. He was done with it. He was getting to that beach first. And so he gets up off his horse, activates his wings, and flies at the optimal angle to get as high as he can, but as far as he can. And he did that for every turn until his wings ran out. And then he realized that he was 300 feet in the air and was nowhere near the shack that had the little ferry.
Yeah.
And proceeded to completely fall and break almost every bone in his body.
Yep. And also take 66 fire damage from the boiling lake.
Yes. And it was... Yeah, that was the...
I mean, it wasn't the most questionable decision that Holger made in that arc.
Yes.
Because that came very soon afterwards. I mean...
You could say that maybe he had a concussion that was leading over.
I don't know. How long can a concussion go on before you just accept that that's who they are?
It's a good point.
I mean, at this point, we were hanging out with Osmandus. We commandeered a boat.
Yeah.
Was it Smokey Joe? I think it might have been Smokey Joe.
It was the mythical figure Smokey Joe.
Smokey Joe gave us a lift, of course. Because why not? Smokey is a warlock patron. He's just everywhere.
He's just God.
A mysterious figure surrounding the eldritch depths of the water.
Yeah. If there's a capital G God in my world, it's Smokey Joe.
I can imagine, Death, the boatman on the River Styx. It's just Smokey Joe underneath that cloak.
Could you imagine getting taken to the after one? You can see what's coming, but the true pain is having to listen to him ramble on about whatever it is.
Most people leap off the boat into the dark waters before they reach their destination.
But you guys decide to kind of go and get on that, and this is where something that, luckily, thanks, Sarah had given you, kind of came into effect. She had given you all these amulets that made you unaffected by extreme weather.
Yes, we had advantage against disease, which came up.
Yep.
Because we were fighting Dandelion, and we had the butterflies. And we had weather, so terrain conditions.
Yeah.
Extreme cold, extreme heat.
Exactly.
And other things of that nature.
Yeah. And in this case, it was extremely hot because you're right next to a volcano.
Oh, yeah.
And this is when I think Smokey Joe told you the story that apparently this volcano doesn't just have a dragon in it. It has an avatar of a forge god or a fire god.
I don't remember Smokey Joe telling us that.
Well, I don't think
I
you
don't
or
think
many of the party remember what Smokey Joe was saying.
I don't know if Smokey Joe was speaking in a language that we could really comprehend, because I definitely remember being surprised when we walked into the volcano and didn't find a dragon. When it, before we even got into the volcano, we found empty boats on that shore.
Yes.
Filled with carcasses, runes, and bodies.
Yes.
Foul magics on display.
Yes.
And Blum was, no, against the natural order, and Grunt was very Valdemite.
Yeah.
And, unsettling, and unexpected, but it didn't stop us on our journey.
No.
Sorry.
Bless you.
Oh, jeez.
But after that, there was actually, as you guys approached, he told you two things. One, that there was this fire god, but clearly fell on deaf ears. But secondly, which didn't fall on deaf ears, but was promptly ignored, was that there is a passage down. There was a passage down below that you should, under no circumstances, go on to.
Now, Chris, here's where I think that you maybe have caused their deaths. Because not only did you mention that a passage exists, which, why? Why give them the option if you really didn't want them to go down there? Second of all, the monster that laid down there enticed one of the characters with a spell.
Yes.
It was
a gaze from its eyes. It had this kind of alluring effect. Effectively, there was this massive pit in this volcano that you couldn't see down because it got basically black. And this, you saw like luminescent eyes below that looked like stars. And if you looked down, you had to roll a wisdom save. Otherwise, it transfixed you.
And only the wisest characters had gone down this route. I mean, what we had, God, the man who wanted to wrestle a fish.
Yeah.
We had Holger, the man who wanted to loot a fish.
Yeah.
And Gronk, the man who wanted to punch a fish.
Exactly. It was the holy trinity of stupidity.
Yes.
And they decided, for various reasons, Gronk, because he failed a roll.
No. So here's the thing. If the intention was for them to not go down the hole.
Yes.
Because I remember you saying at the time, I gave them every chance. I described to them in excruciating detail that this hole would be deadly.
Yes.
If that's the case, why did the monster have a lure?
Because the monster's got to make some money somehow. And the monster has ways of enticing it. The idea was that if you look down, or at least when I was coming up with it, was that it would act like a trap.
Yeah.
But it would be a situation where if the party saw one of their mates starting to walk down, they as a group would find a way of either snapping them out of it or pulling them back. They wouldn't.
I've got to call bullshit on this, because the only way we were going to find out about that power is if someone fell for it. That could have been an NPC.
Yeah.
There were other people around.
Yeah.
And clearly some of the NPCs were stupid enough that they probably would have fallen for it as well.
Yeah.
However, our gun-ho comrades went down there first and sort of like the
you can't put this
cold
on
canaries.
me.
You made it. You put it there. I can put it on you 100%.
I put it there for a reason.
I mean, I can only blame, Felix and Yolda, maybe about 15% for their stupidity in walking down into a hole. But I know that you put it there.
Look, I'll put my hands up. I'll put it there. But that's the end of where my part in this comes to play. Because when it happened, I gave him options.
Yeah.
Effectively, Felix got the roll. He failed the roll.
So he was dead either way.
No, he wasn't. So the way that it worked is you were at the top of it. If you looked down, then you have to make a roll. If you failed the roll, you then began to walk down the stairs.
Okay.
That brought you down. And that took you about 3 turns. Right?
Okay.
So the party had 3 turns to pull him out. Get him out. Admittedly, at this time, the party had decided rather geniusly to split for whatever reason.
Well, so here's the thing. I wasn't there for that session. That was one of the sessions, rather tragically, I wasn't there for.
Okay. So they were there, and Lucas, Thexan, and Lorena had also heard Smokey Joe say, "Beware, you better not go down that hole. There's a dark monster there, and it eats everything that goes. I warn you.
If I go down this hole, I'll be one step further from home."
And that's why Sam should not have taken the first step. Yeah? And this is the same thing. Smokey Joe gave that warning.
Yes, but it came from Smokey Joe!
And when did he ever give you...
Damn it, Chris! If you wanted us to take it seriously, at least have Osmond say it.
You guys weren't listening to Oz at this point.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You had less
respect for him. You've definitely got a point. We had more respect for Smokey Joe, but... Yeah. I suppose what we didn't have credibility with Smokey Joe.
Yeah,
he was the man in need of spaceship parts.
Definitely, he was just a roving. What you guys thought was an idiot, but after this encounter, realized was a prophet. And he given you this warning, and without you being there, the party had decided that half of the party were like, "We are not going in that hole. We refuse. We're not even going to look at it. We will stay here. If you want to go down that hole, you can go down the hole and see what's down there."
The tragic part about this, Chris, is if I had been there, I totally would have gone down that hole.
I know you would have. This is why, if honestly, I said to the party at the time, if too many people die here, we're just going to have to call the campaign off, because there's a chance you just get TPK'd by this.
Here's the thing. There's a chance you get TPK'd by this. So was there a series of rolls when they actually got down there?
Oh, yeah, and they almost did get out. It was literally a situation where a couple of players decided to do certain things, and it screwed them all over. So they basically, there was the three that had decided, no, we're not going down there, we're not even looking at it, we're not even going to go down there.
Yeah.
Gronk looks over, basically to kind of try and decide whether he wants to go down or not, fails the roll, but the other two, Holger and Gud, Gud's like, wait, there's a big monster? It's SmackDown time, my brother. And Holger at that point is like, give me the initiative roll.
So how long did combat last after they...
Well, they then walked down, and they had 3 turns. So Gronk was basically compelled until he was brought down past the second barrier. And there was effectively like a cloak of magical darkness that the law could peer through, but concealed what was below to everyone else.
Right.
So these 3 went through, and once they went through, Gronk was no longer compelled, but they were also then kind of face to face, whatever the thing this was, and they were probably about 30 feet away from a water line. As they then went down, these tentacles reached up and started attacking them and trying to pull them underwater. Each person acted differently. Gronk at the time, because Gronk hadn't experienced hardship, other than that one time his arm got cut off.
Yeah, I was about to say, minus the time he got stolen, beaten in an alley, left dead, and minus an arm.
So clearly Gronk hadn't learned that there are some things that you can't solve with just pure violence. So Gronk...
To be fair, it had solved all of his problems in the past.
That is true. That was meant to be the anomaly beforehand. So this one couldn't have been. So the 3 of them went to work. They had one round of just attacking them. Holder popped his wings, so he was floating above. And then after the monster took its turn, they quickly realized that he was doing a lot of damage. And that realistically, I think he did about 30 or 40 damage to a couple of them, which put him down to half health for one turn. And they were at that point pretty concerned. And by they, I mean, I think Holder and Gronk. The problem was, Gud was like, oh, I'm lower. That means I hit harder. Yeah? This is the anime moment where we're both brought low.
I'm imagining a Thor Ragnarok immigrant song, Thor leaping into the chasmous abyss.
And this was to continue with Gud's desire to do unarmed combat without actually prepping for it.
Oh, jeez.
So he was just wrestling this tentacle, trying to put this tentacle in like an arm lock, like a headlock. But it was just like an arm of this thing. So he was holding onto it, but as he was holding onto it, it was smacking it against the side of the walls. And
That's a great visual.
And so Gronk was like, "Fuck, what can I do? I've got to try and rush." So Gronk rushes down, and because God swam deeper down, because he really wants to get out of this thing, Gronk has to dash to get to God, and then forcibly take his his bonus action. I rolled it to try and pull him off the guy, and then in his next turn he was going to head back up. And so he does this. The next turn passes, and at that point, I think Hyoda was on maybe 40 HP, but the other two were on like 10 and 5 apiece. There was not a lot of free hit points going around at that point. And they swim up. They get about, I think, 10 feet to the surface of this water, and they're both hit. They're both knocked unconscious. And Holger's looking up, and he can see them slowly floating to the top of the water. And at this point, he has the decision of, well, one of them's going to die because he can't lift up both of them. And if he goes down, there's a chance he gets killed. And he then makes the decision to go down and to pick up Gronk.
Obviously.
And
even as thinking this, not knowing how that went, I knew it was going to be Gronk.
And as the two of them fly up, he's smacked by this thing, and they both fall. And yeah, they drown in the bottom of the ocean.
All I can say is shame on the party members who stayed behind.
Yeah.
If they had not been cowardly,
well,
and they had gone down the hole of unimaginable horror, they could have saved them.
They probably could have got them out.
Yeah.
And
so Seb, if you're listening, terrible decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were a fool.
Yeah, the fault really lies on Thex and Lucas and Lorena.
Yeah.
But then something funny happens as I'm narrating the deaths of these players, and it's a sad moment, and some of them were pretty annoyed. Lucas, his player, just butts in and goes, "No way, was that a Leviathan?" And then starts reading the stat block out of what just killed them.
One of that's when we realized he was one of, now I'm using air quotes here, those guys. If you're listening, you know exactly what annoyed us there. Let's just say two things. Of course, the illusion was shattered, and not meant to do that if you're suspending your disbelief. I mean, to be fair, it's like a lot of tables, it's fine, because especially if you're playing lots of regular D&D and it's like in Faerun, you know, people know that almost the stat block's pretty much off by heart, it's fine. But we were doing a homebrew setting. There was no guarantee it was going to be one thing or the other. Yeah. Unless he sort of had gauged that you run a lot of from book monsters. Yeah. Which, I don't know, I guess maybe he's sussed out from you.
I mean, maybe, but there was, I think in that fight, there was only maybe like, up until that point, there was, the only things he encountered was a griffin and a bullet.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big guess.
Yeah.
But either way, that was the end of that session, and the sad send-off of the idiotic trio, as they were dubbed.
Yeah. I mean, it was a sad moment because I was seeing the different memes and messages in the chat, not knowing the context, not knowing what's going on. And so when I got back, Blum was saddened to find that he was the only idiot left.
Yeah.
It's so sad. Tragic. And
I mean, what was your reaction to hearing this?
I was upset because I remember you saying, "Oh, there's going to be something like instant deadly."
Yeah.
Now that I've heard that there was a lure, I think you didn't quite make it clear enough that it was instant death. I don't think. So there were a couple things you could have changed.
Okay.
An NPC dying first.
That's
would have
fair.
made it very clear.
I agree.
Especially since, we could have had an NPC with us. Hell, it could have been a named NPC. Maybe not Oz, because he was important.
Yeah.
But one of his main followers.
Yeah.
Walk down the stairs, get grabbed by something, and instantly die.
Yes.
That could have been a thing.
And would have been a cool moment. So I agree.
Secondly, replace the lure with a fear. So rather than pulling it in, it sends someone out.
But you see,
it was important for lore reasons.
Exactly, for lore reasons. LURE.
Yes, for lure reasons, it was important.
Yeah, the lure has to work as intended.
Yeah.
No, I just partially because I saw the stat mark, I was like, let's flavor it a little bit more. I thought anglerfish, catching bait. And if you want, I can actually give you the canon fate of these characters, because it was still a little bit held in the air.
Now hang on. I think we should discuss that when we went over the tower one shot.
Okay.
Because that was the next time that those three are mentioned.
Yes.
As for this campaign, they were dead. That was the
as far as the rest of the players knew, gone,
super dead.
Bye. See you later. Yeah. And the party then was joined by 3 new players. 3 new characters, the same players.
No, 2 new characters.
Well, yeah, because one, Felix, decided to play the NPC. He played Oz.
Which, I mean, courtesy to him, he made it work. Actually, honestly, I think that was great. I really liked Felix's take on Oz. I thought that it brought a lot of life. Certainly, it meant that you didn't have to keep track of an NPC.
Yeah. He
kept Oz true to the character, which really fantastic.
Yeah. I remember actually one thing that he did is because I made the character sheet for Oz like a regular player's character sheet. But just in combat, unless it got super dicey, he was just a walking name. He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But Felix looked at him and was like, hey, do you mind if I rejig some things, make him a little bit different so that I have some stuff? And he did that. And one thing he did immediately was take the Inspiring Leader feat. And it kind of helped because just after this event, and the new characters joined them, they then went off to fight this avatar of the Forge.
Yeah.
And now the other 2 characters that joined were...
I mean, can we really call it Gud 2.0? Or perhaps...
I think we should just call it Spicy Mud.
Spicy Mud?
Yeah.
Well, let's call it by its proper name. We had James return as Queller. And Queller was... I think there was a meme I think Felix made. Gud, man who likes water. Queller, woman who likes fire. That really sums up the sort of difference between... yeah, it is.
Yeah, it was at this point. I think just as a DM perspective, I was like, you know what, we are probably like 10 sessions, if that, to the end of the campaign. Yeah. I understand.
It was, oh man, because there were real talks with James about, you're not just playing Gun again, are you? then, after he finished playing Koala, there were further, okay, we ban you. You cannot play Gun again.
Yeah. And it was, I think James just kind of got in a funk with Gun, and he couldn't.
Well, he was really sad that he didn't get to play God. Like, he liked God a lot. And I can understand. I liked God a lot.
Yeah.
It was just unfortunate that he died.
Yeah.
And besides Blum, death is permanent.
Yeah. I like to make death permanent. Admittedly, Blum got away with it.
He did. He was I would like to say, even to this point in the campaign too, he's still the only character that has successfully been resurrected with no consequences.
Yes. And then the last character was Valdemar.
Oh, fantastic.
Now, I want us to start by saying actually that when I told players that they were going to do this, if they were making new characters, I basically told them that make a backstory, but understand that the backstory probably isn't going to be explored. Because at this point, the campaign's going to be quick because you're getting to the end of it, and this is like the final race and blast to the end. And so the players bought the characters, and Felix's approach was, hey, if I'm going to do that, I might as well pick up a character that's already halfway through his story in Oz.
Smart, yeah.
And that way, at least it feels like he's got the backstory written, it works the world, he's got his own ambitions, it's there, and I already feel like I'm integrated. And James was, I'm going to play Fire God. I
mean, to be fair, James picked a character that didn't really need a backstory because they were a warrior that was already invested in the race that was going on.
Yeah.
They were in, we were in a combat, big tournament, warriors were there, people had come from all around to be and participate. So it was perfectly reasonable for Quella to be there based on Quella's character.
Yeah, and Quella's character was that she had a vision from this avatar of the Forge God that had basically been trapped in this mountain, and he had asked people to come there and free him by killing his avatar. And she took up the mantle, and that was kind of her aim.
Yeah.
So it slotted in perfectly. Valdemar was a character that came with not a huge amount of backstory, but quickly left a massive impact.
Oh, Christ,
on the campaign.
Yeah.
And he started by telling the rest of the party that he was a priest that had been brought over from the Persovian theocracy, or sent over to kind of apostatize the entire area, and had just somehow got caught up in this race. And we'll touch on Valdemar, I think, in a Valdemar episode.
Yeah. I mean, either at the end of this one or next one, we'll be touching on the aftermath of the campaign.
Yeah.
And that was where Valdemar really left a huge impression. The sort of consequences of Valdemar as a character were enormous for the setup of the next campaign. And even the sort of mini campaign preceding it.
Yeah. And I guess, to speed run through this part, there was you guys arrived, you fought this you fought a vampire there, which was one of the Mandel brothers had ambushed you on the way, and there was this kind of spooky JoJo-esque vampire encounter.
Yes, of course,
with Lorena and Thexan
and Lucas,
and the three of them ended up winning. But it was a close fight.
Yes.
Even though Lorena was, I think, mercilessly bullied by this vampire because he knew that she was the one that could dish out the massive amounts of damage, or looked like she could, because he had seen her cast massive magic spells.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to get at her. And then after that fight, the party then kind of rejoins up. Oz gives an epic speech, and then the party charges to fight this avatar. And, it was a massive fight. It was a good, fun combat.
It was a flipping giant. It was a giant who looked a little bit like Orn from League.
Yeah.
Based on the character model.
Yes.
And here's the problem with those fights playing a ranged characters is it's not amazingly memorable for me because I did the same thing every fight.
Yeah.
I sat at the back and shot arrows.
Yeah, you were a master stealth archer.
I mean, he wasn't so great at the stealth and he wasn't so great at the archer. Blum only had a +3. He never got a high dex. I think some of the melee fighters had better dex than he did.
Yeah, I think Oz probably did.
I think he had a higher intelligence than he did dex, or maybe wisdom.
That did make sense, though, because I think at the end of the campaign, Blum, or very close to the end, he transitioned to a druid.
Yeah, well, Blum was a normal person first.
Yeah.
Normal. And
normal
warrior second. Yeah. Normal for Restria.
Yeah. And the whole fight kind of basically ended with Quella doing a deflect missile on this thing's massive hammer.
Yeah.
And just kind of through... There's that scene in Kung Fu Panda where he catches a cannonball and sends it back at him.
Yeah.
It was very much that.
in a piece.
Yeah, and it hits the thing, it knocks him out, sprays like magma everywhere. But you guys were victorious. You're able to grab a dragon egg, and then
loot.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of money.
We got a loot, and guess who showed up in order to take a share of that loot? Well, it was our old friend Marco, the thief, the swiping thief. He showed up right at the last minute to swipe our gold and take our good, well-earned victory.
Exactly. He appeared out of nowhere, apparated from the side of a wall.
Yeah.
And then
like the vampire. He yoinked it all and disappeared into the night like the wind.
Yeah, and then after that, you then kind of went back to the well, actually, no, you didn't go back to the city to give the egg back. Instead,
no, we went straight on to.
We went straight to Huron's tomb.
That's right,
because it was revealed at this point to Oz, because you had not told him this, and this, I guess, was the first time Oz really kind of showed some major leadership quality, in that you told him about this threat, and he listened to you.
He did believe us,
and he thought that realistically, the most important and the biggest threat to his kingdom, to his potential kingdom and its people, was this thing.
I mean, to be fair, it was.
Yeah.
Easily.
And so you all sailed off with your dragon egg.
Yep.
Went.
We went to a town first. What town did we go to? If I consult the map.
You went to Cerulean Pass.
Cerulean Pass.
Yeah.
Which, blimey. Ah, yes. Okay, so the town that we went to on the edge of the boiling basin would have been Blazeglade?
Yes.
So I believe, was that the town where we had Lorena, first of all, purchased lots of jewellery, and we had lots of jewellery-based insults and shenanigans around Lorena, who refused to assist in the procurement of necessary party items because she had some jewellery she didn't want to sell.
Yeah. I think actually the thing that she wouldn't give up was it wasn't even for like anyone else's stuff. It was a ring of spell storing for herself.
Yes.
That would have made her infinitely more powerful.
Yeah.
And the party were like, we are willing to put in money of our own money to help buy you this.
Yeah.
And her response was, I'm not selling my jewelry. Give me more money.
Yeah. I mean, just the I mean, you know, the logic was flawless. Clearly, it was just beyond our understanding. It was truly we couldn't understand it. We left her to it. You know, we didn't press the issue after she absolutely refused. Yeah, we had 2 days of just preparing, talking about what we were going to do next. Coella did Coella leave the party?
I think,
because I don't know, did James play a different character or did he? Because I know that he played someone else at the end.
He played.
I think Coella didn't start the final battle with us.
No, I think he knew something that was coming up, and he decided to basically sit in and watch until something happened.
Yeah. And then Osmond did the politicking, and he did some speeches.
Yeah, he gave some speeches.
Valdemar did some proselytizing.
Yep.
Thexan bought stuff.
Yep.
Blum made drugs. And Lorena went and got some jewelry. Yeah,
Lorena walked around.
Pretty much.
Looking flyers up.
That's basically what Lorena did the whole campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we really shouldn't be surprised that was what happened.
Yeah, and then following this, you guys were given a couple of hours, basically, or an evening, before you decided you wanted to go directly to Huron's tomb. And I do realize now you did return back You returned back to Harkonnen, and you were doing all of this in Harkonnen.
Yeah.
Because you then travelled to the Waygate. That's what got you.
Of course. Of course.
But regardless, you were doing all this in Harkonnen, and there was a big dinner to celebrate Osmond's recognition as the main heir.
Yep.
And it was during this session that I got a message from Yoda saying something along the lines of, "The mage must die." Being a Valdemar, or a Pertovian theocrat, as he was, his view was that any mage, any Penye here, was innately evil and had to be gone. And so Valdemar paid me his share of the loot and said, he gave me instructions on what he wanted done. And then he hired some stuff. And Valdemar effectively set up a trap at this party. Lorena was given a message by an NPC that she had come in contact with called Luke Hawker in the town, had some interactions with.
Yes.
And she trusted to an extent. And he had told her that he needed her to meet him in this back garden because he had some information for her. And so she goes out there with, I believe, Thexan, and Thexan alone.
Yeah.
And it's then revealed that he is being held prisoner or being held under blackmail by these brutes that Valdemar's hired. And and so he backs off, and they then attack Lorena.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that Lorena, as she would normally, goes to cast her magic. And the entire time, Valdemar was sitting over them, watching from the windowsill.
Enjoying the party.
Sipping his wine, casting silence on her.
The perfect spell.
Yeah.
Not even dispel magic, just silence.
Mm-hmm. Because she couldn't cast magic spells that had a verbal component, and she couldn't cry out for help.
Yeah. No one else at the party even knew what was going on.
And Lorena met her end there.
Yeah.
As Thexan was kind of trying to protect her, he ended up having to run.
Yeah.
It
was epic. Epically somber. That was a proper sort of super villain moment there.
Yeah.
Because Valdemar kept his hands clean.
Yeah.
We as the players knew. The characters never found out.
And Valdemar was with the characters all the way to the end.
Yeah.
The impact of Valdemar in the party and in the campaign is massive.
Huge.
Because he stays so close to members of the party because they never find out what he did. And just as a D&D moment, I think that was probably the coolest moment we've ever had.
Oh, God.
And
yeah.
I can understand one that at the time Matt was pretty upset because this is a character we've been playing for 2 years. He'd really missed it. But I think even he, after it was he recognized actually it was quite a cool moment.
It was incredibly cool.
But not only that, I have to commend the fact that Matt, even though he was annoyed about it, the next session he was messaging me back saying, "Hey, here's an idea for my next character. Let's kind of get moving."
Yeah.
And his initial response wasn't, "I must create a character that kills priests."
Yeah. We've all done it. I've certainly done it before. But yeah, the desire, the sort of the lure there to make something purely based on revenge is all too powerful, but he managed to resist.
Yeah, and I think it was something that paid off, but I don't think I'd want to do again.
Well, we almost did it. Now, we'll talk about that when we get to where we are currently in the campaign. Yeah. The clusterfuck that was Herschel.
Yes, but I think with Herschel it was different because it was his intent was never to attack the party.
Yeah.
It was to do nefarious things.
And I felt like I set it up fairly, or at least I had been setting, it would have continued.
Yes.
yeah, I had sort of sown the seeds that something was wrong already.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, from Matt's perspective, that came out of the blue. It was an NPC they trusted, for one.
Yeah.
And we hadn't known Valdemar, the Valdemites. Well, I guess they weren't Valdemites then, were they?
No,
the Valdemar sort of priests of, what was the
Persilovian theocracy.
Yeah, of the Persilovian theocracy.
Yeah.
We didn't really know that they were super anti-Penny here because, I mean, we'd had dealings with them before.
Yeah. Well, this
and
is
Lorena had survived it.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. The people that you had met before were kind of like the more
they were
adjusted,
moderates. Yeah,
moderate arc. Valdemar was very much
he was
radical,
extreme. He was proper Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Very, very hard line.
And all this time, by the way, it came out of blue to Matt as well because he didn't know any of this was happening because it was all communicated between me and him privately in DMs through roles, and all it was like he the moment he wanted to do it, he messaged me and just said, "Start the plaid now," and then and then
Operation begin.
And then queued up Lacrimosa by Mozart.
Oh my god! Hjalta is he just is a super villain.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was stunning. I think it was one of the moments that was just.
I stick with you.
Yeah.
We're gonna need him on to talk about Valdemar at some point. Some point soon. So we had the amazing moment, and I'm sure we will come back to it at some point.
Yes.
But going on from there, of course, Lorena died.
Yes.
Thexan and Blum were the only people. Well, I guess Thexan was the only member of the original crew left.
Yeah, he was.
He was literally the only one left.
Yeah.
Because everyone else was dead.
Yeah.
Everyone else was dead.
Blum was close enough to it.
I mean, Blum wasn't from Greenhold, though. You know, I mean, you know, they met him before the first time skip, so
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the next character that came in to replace Lorena was
Rafe Regulus.
Rafe Regulus,
and he was kind of like a minor noble, a bit like with Oz. He was a noble that was in the area.
Yeah.
And
a very nobly noble.
Yeah. And to be fair to Matt, he hit it, and he was just like, he just immediately enters, and he's just like, "I'm the Commanders of the North." And like, I didn't know there was a Commanders of the North, but I'm gonna roll with it.
It's just fantastic. Yeah, he actually nailed the character introduction for snooty bastard. It was so good,
and he set it all up. It worked really well. And to be honest, like that was another thing. I was like, oh wait, like I can see Matt interacting more with the party if he feels like he's got a character that, you know, has more intertwined with the rest of them. And yeah, it was brilliant. He kind of came in and just signed up, ready to go. I don't want to explore his backstory too much. Now, the reason why I don't want to do that is because we didn't explore it much in the campaign.
Yeah.
And Matt has told me that if something happens, God forbid, to his character in the new campaign, he may want to take part of that story and just reuse it because it's never explored.
See.
And all I can say is it was very cool. And it was related to an item that he had.
I mean, I'm not gonna let you go away with that because at some point I'm gonna need to know, because we are gonna go over Ariosk in one of our episodes, and that is definitely gonna be part of it.
Yeah, I think at that point I'll feel more comfortable knowing either one that like Matt is either going to be a bit safe from using the character, or if he's using it at that point, there might be a bit more time to talk about it. And even so, at that point, hopefully enough time has passed that it's not directly on the table.
Yeah. Knowing the elements in the world isn't the same as knowing how they fit together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Regardless, we need to move on to the final act.
Yes.
Because this was the stage where we were finally entering Huron's tomb. We went back to the ways. We entered into the final Tailspire map.
Exactly.
Hot on the heels of Bane and the Blue Elf.
Yes.
The Blue Spear, who we still, only said remember the name of.
Yeah. Rather conveniently, somehow the timelines had, matched up.
He reminded us of the name after we got it wrong in the first episode, and I still don't remember it.
It's Hergirth O Galdin.
I don't. Blue Spear is fine for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It was Elvish jargon.
Elvish jargon.
And you guys had arrived, and waiting out front of this tomb was a character.
It wasn't, because he was inside.
Yes, there was a camp. That's what it was.
There was a camp outside.
That was the telltale sign.
There was a camp outside with a few with someone's belongings.
Yeah.
And it clearly wasn't the enemies.
Yes.
It was someone else. Someone else had made it to the tomb before the party.
Exactly.
And so when they went inside and found the enemies, we found the Blue Spear.
Yeah.
We found Bane.
Yeah.
And one more enemy. We found
Demonic
fucking Krem.
Yeah.
Demonic Krem, full coined.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Had
the
a
man who
horn.
left us for some chump change. Fully in sort of demonic power. Yeah. And we found Jonah. Yeah. Not dead. Jonah was alive.
As you enter this long forgotten tomb, this tomb of this great hero,
that required a few pints of blood to get into, I will add.
Oh yeah. The way of getting into it was basically cutting your arm and feeding it like 2 pints of blood. Or something.
It was like 8 pints. It was like 10. It was an enormous amount. Yeah.
But you went down, and you see this scene kind of laid out of these 3 villains walking up to a pretty wounded Jonah.
Yeah.
Standing in front of the tomb, trying to stop them from getting there.
Yeah, we had but Jonah by then was already on low health. He was basically brought to his knees at the start of that fight. We had talked about that, and I had made it clear to Chris that I wanted Jonah to die.
Yeah.
From the very start, I wanted Jonah to die. I wanted him to die in front of Vexen, and I wanted him to die painfully and slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this fight started out, and the party just jumps in.
We had Vexen rushing in front. We had Valadimir at the back spewing summons, like he summoned like a celestial thing.
Yeah.
Like a fucking Pokemon trainer.
I think it was like a divine guardian.
Yeah.
Something like that.
He summoned
Guardian of Faith.
Guardian of Faith, yes. Yeah. And we had I almost said God there. No. We had, I think Quella had been there for that.
Yeah,
Quella
hadn't come back.
Hadn't come back. We had Regulus was also fighter.
Yeah, Regulus was a fighter warlock.
So freaking getting in there with a sword.
You had Thanks and Oz.
Honestly, I forgot that Thanks was there.
Yeah.
Because I'm certain that Felix did at times.
Well, he remembered this fight. Because Thanks put about 80 points of breath weapon.
Oh my god, he did.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that's nothing compared to our main combo, which was the microwave. Because we had we had I think it was Wall of Thorns.
Yeah.
Which was, to trap the Blue Spear in.
Yeah.
And then we had, I think it was either Fireball or it was a prolonged spell.
Yes, I think it was. Is there a storm spell?
Yeah.
I think it might have been a storm spell.
Storm Sphere.
Yeah, I think it might have been either a storm sphere or it was a wall of fire.
Yeah. And that was inside the Wall of Thorns, so we had microwaved this man. Yeah.
So the Blue Sphere could teleport as a legendary action. He can effectively lightning teleport to places.
But only to places that he can see.
Yeah. So you guys, this fight goes in, and admittedly, it should have been even closer, but it was still a pretty decent fight.
Oh god, yeah.
But he goes and reaches for this blade. Which
before that, we've got to talk about Krem went down, and Vexen, in all of his wisdom, decided to revive Krem.
Yes, but that's at the end. You see,
was it?
It was
because
you had killed the Blue Spear.
Yeah,
you had killed Bane. You had microwaved them. You had destroyed them. Admittedly, you were low, and Krem was the last one that was fighting. And Krem goes to grab this blade. And it is at that point that he's knocked unconscious and about to die.
Yeah.
And Vexen goes and grabs the blade.
Of course. Now, here's the thing. at the start of the fight,
Yeah.
I was under the impression that we wanted the blade.
Yes.
That the blade was the thing that Thexan needed.
Yes.
So when he got the blade and then we lost, I was really confused.
Okay. Yeah. So if he had the blade,
yeah,
he would have been fine. He grabbed the blade and he should have been fine.
Mm.
The problem was he grabbed the blade and then looked over at Krem, and then a coin appeared in his hand. And effectively, the campaign could have ended in two ways. One, you would have got the blade, and there would have been one final showdown, epic combat with a Dark One.
Oh, that's right.
So that's what was going to happen.
He flipped.
But instead, he sees Krem die, and he holds the coin. And much like Krem did, he begs the Dark One to revive Krem.
After everything.
And
After everything. I mean, Jonah had... Oh, in that fight, Jonah had used the one spell. Jonah had accepted magic into his heart.
Yeah.
But only knowing that he would die because he hates magic.
Yeah.
And he used his last life points to cast life transference.
Yes.
To heal Thexan back, and that was Jonah's last breath.
Yeah.
He transferred his blood to Thexan.
Yeah.
And Thexan then... So he sealed a pact with the Dark One.
He sealed a pact with the
He
Dark
made
One.
an agreement. He did the same thing Krem did.
Did the same
In order to save Krem, the one who'd already betrayed us.
who had already betrayed us, was already dead.
Yeah.
Honestly, because it is on my mind. He stole the Declaration of Independence to prevent someone from stealing the Declaration of Independence.
To give you context, we just watched National Treasure. Great movie. Do rewatch it if you've got the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the logic leaps in that movie are fantastic. It would make a great D&D heist.
Yeah.
Blum, he... he was confused. He was confused.
I did. Yeah.
I had a physical, visceral reaction to the stupidity in that sort of fight. Because it wasn't just bittersweet, it was just bitter, that ending in that fight. Because we had killed our enemy.
Yes.
So that was great.
Yeah.
But we had lost Jonah.
Yeah.
We had lost Thexan. And we had lost the war because the Dark One won.
Yeah. So the reason why the Dark One wanted the sword was because the blood of Huron, effectively the two that could have done it was you, Jonah, and Thexan.
Now here's the thing. I always imagined that Blum actually wasn't part of it.
Sorry. No, Blum wasn't part of it. It was Jonah and Thexan.
Yeah, it was only them two.
Only them two had the power. But because Jonah didn't have... Effectively, Thexan was a child of prophecy. So
he was really the main character of this campaign. We all sort of knew it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fitting that he was the last person from the originals to survive.
And the interesting part, I guess, comes with the fact that it was more so because of Jonah's backstory that Thexan had this special ability with this blade.
I really pushed it.
Was because that you refused to tell him who his mum actually was, and the fact that his mum was actually a Penny.
No, he knew.
What? Did he? I guess he...
Wait, oh my God, did he know?
I don't think you ever told him.
Because the times that it was mentioned at the Boiling Lake and was then forgotten because the dragon took it.
Yeah.
And that was Jonah way back.
Yeah.
And I think the other people who was with Jonah who heard it knew.
Yeah.
Because their memories of that weren't taken away.
Yeah.
They knew. They just never shared.
Yeah.
And then Blum knew.
Yep. And that was the point of the talk.
And that was the talk. But he never got round to it because Seb was never free.
Yeah, yeah. And and so when Thexan grabbed this blade, he had the option and the ability to go find the Dark One in Voluthair, or the remaining, it was basically the body of the Dark One at that point. It would have been literally
the body of the Dark One. Now, what does the body of the Dark One look like?
So, deep Dark One lore. The Dark One was not a god. The Dark One was the guy that betrayed. He was a very powerful elf who ascended to godhood through the betrayal. The Dark One was originally the brother of the king of this massive civilization.
The king. Now, is this the same king we met at the bottom of the tower, or a different king?
Bottom of the tower.
In the one shot.
Yes.
Same guy.
Would have been the same king.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the world, we're putting this, just looking at the world map,
Yeah.
that's Restria, northwest in the ocean. And that was where that king reigned, really.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the brother of that civilization. Essentially, did you ever watch the Atlantis Disney movie?
Yeah.
Like that sort of high magic-y sort of technology to some extent, but not quite steampunk.
No, sorry, I think we're completely on the wrong side. The brother of the original ruler of the empire that fell in the calamity.
Yeah.
So this great trick.
Yeah.
The civilization that destroyed created the Scar. He was the main brother of the king of that.
Oh, I see.
And I guess now is a good time as any to basically tell a little bit of the backstory there. In effect, he tricked the entire civilization into believing that this item, this thing, if they connected enough of it, which was Aether Quartz, it would act as a storage repository or like a massive, giant, infinite generator of magical energy.
I see.
Instead, what it was effectively enough energy to ascend him into godhood.
Okay, also, so the power was real. It's just that how it was going to be used was the deceit.
He basically tricked them and used it as like an EMP wave on the avatar of the gods, and also to ascend to godhood.
I see.
And that would have been revealed if you'd gone over to kill him. But Thexan then was like,
he bounced out.
He was like, "Give me Krem. You can have everything." And yeah.
And then Thexan, Krem was left behind.
Krem was left behind.
Krem was left alive, and he was alive.
Yeah.
Krem actually, amazingly, survived. And even though he had given himself over, actually came out intact.
Yeah.
Which is really astonishing. So really, he's the last of the originals left standing.
Yeah.
But, since he did give himself to the Dark One, I still lose respect for Krem. Bastard. Gave us out.
Traitor.
Yeah. Valdemar did then arrest Krem for being a magician and associated to the Dark One.
Yes.
Blum busted him out.
Yep.
Got him free. And this was when the parties sort of went their separate ways.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about... So Blum's ending was fairly simple.
Yeah.
Not a great politician. Not particularly interested in the politics of the world. But he was interested in his sort of burgeoning responsibility in terms of nature, the druidic balance.
Yeah.
So he sort of restored an Ogier grove.
Yes.
I think we did decide where it was.
Yes. Just a little note. I think the reason why you went to an Ogier grove was because it was Gronk's Ogier.
Yes.
Because before Gronk died, he had a vision that it had basically been destroyed.
And it had.
Yeah.
The Ogiers were gone. Blum found an empty grove.
Yeah.
And was sort of restoring it. And that was where he bought Krem.
Yeah.
And, they were together for a while. Krem did leave the grove at certain points. And so he wasn't as connected sort of as, Blum was there like full time now. He was like proper old man yelling at clouds.
Yeah.
I think old man Blum is like akin to Smokey Joe.
Oh yeah.
Like properly insane.
Same wavelength.
Yeah. But of course, like high level druid, slow ages becomes less and less of a thing.
Yeah.
That being said, he's a pretty shit druid. But that was, and now Blum is a sort of, he's one of the sort of centers for the force for good in terms of nature.
Yes.
And the balance of the world. And so he's more like a sort of quest giver now, I think.
Yes.
Is a great way to describe him. He's one of the hubs. He's like a faction heart.
Yeah.
in terms of like druidic power, and that was his ending.
Yeah,
which I thought was an okay ending for Blum. You know, the sort of realization of his bloodline and his true name, the ascension of Druid and reestablishment of Druidic magic.
Yeah,
his attempt to rebuild the Ogier land, but inevitably the failing of it. Because whilst Blum did succeed in gaining magic, he didn't succeed in properly rebuilding and sort of and protecting the land because it was constantly fighting against him.
Yeah, and that is actually part of the story of one of the characters in the second campaign.
Yeah.
With regards to the other characters, Thexans was pretty mysterious, but effectively he was the avatar of the Dark One now.
Yeah.
But he had, by choosing to side with Thexan, he had effectively lost control of any forces that it had in the Scar. So the Scar still had like Dark One, like Trollocs and Orc bands.
So it was a long-term investment because he was giving up the power of the Scar.
Yeah.
For a powerful host.
Yeah, and a host that he can actually walk around in and have an effect in the world. With regards to, I think we'll save Oz and Valdemar right till the end.
They are connected.
They have the most impact and the biggest connection.
Oh yeah.
Lucas had the classic American dream. He returned to go and get his to go meet his wife. And had a kid and just, lived a normal life. With regards to the others, I think I'm missing someone else out.
Well,
went off and did Wraith things.
Yeah, Regulus was reabsorbed into the politics of Ariosk.
Yeah.
And essentially, it was the only people left to talk about are Osmond and Valdemar.
Yes, and they had a massive impact. Now, I don't know if we want to talk about it in this episode because it might be good to just tackle it in its entirety and what happened in the
when we get Yolder on, and maybe also Felix.
Yeah.
It might be good to have them both on at the same time.
Yeah, or if at least one of them.
Yeah.
For that episode, but we can just talk about what happened and also their inspiration for the new characters. But I think or at least for this episode, we could leave it there.
That was the end. I think we should do a cursory sort of finale in terms of how that set up for campaign 2, at least sort of from the perspective of the characters who weren't involved.
So Yuri, Yuri is a character in campaign 2, but Oz becomes king. He then leads an army over to Restria and conquers part of it back and establishes his own kingdom. It kind of fulfilled storylines and intentions that the people from the Ashen Plains had wanted to kind of get back at the original host of Hurons that had gone and conquered the area. They wanted to go to their ancestral home and take it back.
Yeah, and then Valdemar gained power. He had performed an extremely high status feat.
Yeah.
He had beaten back the force of the Dark One. He had purged Huron's tomb. Big success.
Yeah.
But there was a new sort of faction that followed his ideals for the future of the Proto-Lovan Docracy and sort of became the Valdemite faith.
The Valdemites. And effectively, after Oz dies on campaign, and Valdemar becomes the kind of the head pontiff of the Proto-Lovan Theocracy.
Yeah.
And at that point, there's a schism in the church, and he is killed in...
Valdemar dies.
Yeah. Valdemar is killed by a bishop, a rogue bishop.
Now that I didn't know.
Who basically he's a rogue Valdemite bishop that kills him because he knows the only way to make the schism occur is by making Valdemar a martyr.
Now, I guess we'll understand more about that when we actually get Yolder on.
Yeah,
because I'm certain there must have been you and him conversing about that.
So I asked to know if it was okay if I could do it.
I see.
But I didn't. Well, when he told me it was okay, I did it. But it was mostly that, like, talking with him afterwards, I know the intent that he wanted to take whatever power he could into the church. So I just took that, and I figured that realistically, it added a bit of like development. It meant that, you know, ultimately you guys as players walking around in campaign 2, it would be unlikely you'd have a direct confrontation with him. But it also made him more of a mysterious figure. Yeah.
Blimey. Yeah. Once again, we're going to hear a lot more about that because that was like essentially a big part of the setting up for campaign 2.
Yeah.
Going on, we have, if we wanted to go chronologically, we could talk about the sort of how many sessions was it? The sort of the Mists mini campaign.
Yes.
Because that happened in between campaigns 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Or we could talk about the setting up of the characters for campaign 2 next time.
I think we should go through the characters for campaign 2. And then, before we go into the actual arc, we cover the one shot that happens.
Look, I mean, we've got to talk about we've got to talk about the characters for that because we had lots of very interesting ones, and the fates of those characters might affect what's going on in the world around them.
Yeah, very much so.
Particularly what happened, you know, there are some, just like the initial one shot that saw the release of Liberty from the prison, the dragon, you know, a big ancient dragon being released is a big thing for the world, and something of probably more significant value occurred during this mini campaign. So we will touch on that in a future episode. Which I'm sure we'll say a lot.
But other than that, thank you to our very loyal and wonderful listener. Thanks, Seb. But have a lovely rest of your day, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. See you next time.